If you want Colts talk all year long, you're in the right place. This is the official Colts podcast, giving you an updated look at what's new with the Horseshoes.
He's got it! Touchdown! Jack Doyle! And he's going to be brought down inside the 15, and it's going to go to DeForest Buckner. Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's going to go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
From the Power Home Solar Studio, let's get the podcast started.
Hello again, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Gorman, and this is the Colts official podcast, joined weekly by Miss Larra Overton. Casey Vallier is here as well, and we do it week in and week out with the help of our friends at PointsBet Sportsbook, proud sportsbook partner of the Indianapolis Colts, and a faster, easier way to bet on the big game, now live with a GOAT, and they call it a GOAT insurance promotion. Bet on either team to win the big game and get money back up to $50 in free bets if your team loses by 43 points or less. Well, that'll be a Super Bowl record. So what they're saying is, hey, we got your back. PointsBet Sportsbook. Larra Overton, let me start with you. A lot of offseason moves. We see where Matthew Stafford, who was the buzz of ending up in Indianapolis as a potential quarterback, and the Los Angeles Rams then obviously said, we are going to back the Brinks truck up to take Mr. Stafford off of everyone's hands. So sometimes, as I've heard the Colts owner in recent press conferences through the years past, he said, sometimes the deals you don't make are the best deals you can make.
Absolutely, because that was costing a whole lot for the Rams, but this is a bit their MO. When you look at the previous trades that they've made to assemble the roster the way that they have, you think about the trade for Jalen Ramsey, like they're one of those who
that's two ones. That's 2 1s for
right.
Ramsey.
They favor the side of looking at established guys and bringing them in, kind of rather than taking a big move as a rookie and somewhat of they see the less gamble as let's let a guy play a few years or, as many years now as Matt Stafford has, see where he is. And now we make the move for him rather than looking at a guy's collegiate resume and plugging him in and fitting. So it's just an interesting, different take that they have. I made the joke to someone else earlier in the week, they must really not trust their college scouting department whatsoever, I suppose. They just want their pro scouts to look at who's already in the league rather than, assessing the combine and the Senior Bowl, which is not entirely true because they obviously do some later round picks and all of those things. But that's just the way they've formed their roster. That's the way this organization has been run. And there's apparently some great rapport between, Matt Stafford and Sean McVay, some familiarity there that they felt like that this was the move to put them in place. But it's interesting because you look at the success Jared Goff had early in his career, and they were so high on him coming out of college. And obviously, took them into playoff contention. This guy has more playoff wins than Matt Stafford does in a significantly shorter period of time. But this set a very high bar for trades and off-season deals. When you think about the other quarterbacks in the conversation this off-season, where you have Deshaun Watson demanding a trade, man, if this is the price for Matt Stafford, what's the price for a Deshaun Watson? What's that going to take? And, you look at the priority that the Colts put on draft picks. And this is a whole lot. You would be giving up a whole lot, especially with the other needs this team has, left tackle among them. That would have been a huge investment in just one piece. What did we hear from Chris Ballard early on? It's never about one guy. That was what he said when Andrew Luck retires, and that was certainly going to be true with this offseason and how things played out at the quarterback position.
Yeah, let him do his thing. And I'm talking about that, the quarterback position, because there's still a lot of avenues that we can go. There are trades that could be possibly made in the NFL. I'm not just saying with the Colts, but obviously there's, day of draft trades as well, moving up from 21, possibly getting your hands on a quarterback. But we're going to find that out over the next few months. What we do know right now, Casey Vallier, is the Colts have to have to go into the gun shack and put some more weapons in their coaching staff because they're losing a lot of bodies. It started with Nick Sirianni taking off for the head job in Philadelphia, and he dragged along Jonathan Gannon as his defensive coordinator. So, Casey, how about this overall? And I know, Larra, you're up on this too. Where are we at with our coaching situation in this staff?
No, you're spot on there, Gorman. I mean, there's a handful of spots to fill, and I think we all saw this coming. You saw what great group that Chris Ballard put together with his development and his scouting department. We started to see them get interviews, and I kind of thought that was the avenue we were going to see this year. I thought the staff would stay relatively assembled, but you'd start seeing guys like Morocco Brown and Ed Dodds getting looks, and those guys stay here, and then you start losing other guys, and it was kind of a ripple effect. It seemed like every day another piece was going, but that's what happens with good teams. So clearly there was something here that you got to kind of tip your cap to Frank Reich for establishing this staff, that these guys are going out and getting these other positions. So you've got an offensive coordinator now with Marcus Brady elevating as we see Nick Sirianni as the head coach in Philly, but you got a couple other spots. You got defensive backs coach Jonathan Gannon. He joined Sirianni in Philly along with Kevin Patullo. You've got a couple other spots that, Tom Rathman retiring. We know what a great job he's done with his running back group. I mean, 2 fumbles in 2 years out of literally in 32 games, 2 fumbles. That is incredible.
And 1,000-yard rushers in both.
1,000-yard rushers. I mean, it's one of those things that is something that is definitely an emphasis that this running back group has taken from him. So that is going to be a big spot to fill. But I look at Frank Reich and Chris Ballard and go, these guys, they're built for this. They take shots and that's fine. We've got a list of guys that I'm ready just to plug in and use.
Larra, you said it. And let me start by saying this. You've talked about Gannon and what he brings to the defense and his familiarity with players and stuff like that. Basically, without saying it, Larra Overton, you said, hey, this guy is going to be a defensive coordinator soon.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the impact that he had in recruiting some of the guys, helping bring the guys who he did just this last offseason with Xavier Rhodes and the familiarity that they had, the development that they had. And one of the things when Xavier Rhodes joined the Colts, he was upfront in saying Jonathan Gannon was a huge factor in that. And he described JG as very much a player's coach. He knew how to read Xavier Rhodes, and just in terms of developing him, he knew kind of how to push the right buttons, so to speak, to get him to the production that he'd had in those Pro Bowl type of seasons. And he's one of my favorite guys to talk to when we be in the building. He's a fiery guy. He will do great things with that staff that they're assembling. And a couple of things that you look to, it's a lot easier now for Frank Reich to bring in high caliber assistant coaches than it was back in 2018 when he initially came in. There's a completely blank slate. Now people are saying like, hey, this is a playoff team. Frank Reich and the team that he's built, Chris Ballard, they're doing something right. Now this is a much more desirable assistant coaching job than it was even 3 and 4 years ago. So Coach Reich is in a prime position to bring in those guys. He always has that running list, right, of guys who you would like to bring in. Can we also just talk about, we saw this a few years ago, kind of with the Jets, when we joked about all of the guys, the former Colts who'd gone to the Jets. Right. Now there's this like flop with Philadelphia where, of course, last season, Coach Reich grabbed Mike Groh. He was a free agent, so to speak, after he departed the Eagles. So he grabs Mike Groh and he comes in as the wide receivers coach. And now you have Nick Sirianni going to Coach Reich's former team in Philadelphia and taking some of those guys. So it's really funny how, how intertwined all of that is. And it's something that if you're around this league long enough, you tend to see it, right? So the caliber of coaches who are coming in now to fill some major voids when you talk about, Tom Rathman leading that. And of course, Nick Sirianni, the great thing is you're going to have that continuity with Marcus Brady. And Marcus has already been in this system working with Coach Reich. We know how collaborative that room has always been. Marcus Brady has always had a strong voice in that room working with the quarterbacks. One thing that's very intriguing to me, as well as this quarterback conversation unfolds over the next few months, one of the people who spent the most time with Marcus Brady is Jacob Eason. We still don't know what the outlook is for Jacob, but he has already immersed himself in working with Coach Brady. I saw a report that he's going to be working with Tom House as well in some quarterback development this offseason, something he did last offseason since he lost all that time from no rookie minicamp, no OTAs, all of that. So I am very curious to watch as these months unfold what the Marcus Brady elevation as the new offensive coordinator means for this quarterback quarterback situation moving forward.
We got a lot to talk about. The Super Bowl is upon us. The Bucs and the Chiefs going at it. Some former Colts assistants and interim head coaches in Bruce Arians. So I'm kind of, leaning towards the Bucs side. We're going to have Stacey Dales from the NFL Network come in. And this is, as I said to Larra earlier, Stacey is a rock star. And I mean, like, in every sense of the word. She's been at the top of the mountain personally, as far as being an elite athlete, a third overall pick in the WNBA. And now she has everyone's dream job. She's talking football on the NFL Network. So a big week to talk about with her, and that's coming up. But Casey, before we get to Miss Stacey Dales, I wanted to ask you about this game right here, because I do need some homerisms now. I do need some help on this game. And before we cut loose, I want to find out the exact score and what's going to happen on Sunday from you, Casey, right now.
I'm saying it's going to throw off a lot of bettors out there. I'm thinking you take the under for sure, because I'm expecting it to be like a typical Super Bowl. You've got those jitters. It's never as high scoring as you think. I'm thinking, you ready for this? I think Mahomes outdoes Brady just because he has the ball at the end, and they win like a 17-13 game.
Wow, a close game.
That's what I'm thinking.
One of the oddities, too, of the many, many oddities, and I actually just came back from the Tampa area.
Yeah,
so
we're going to get to that.
Well, one of the oddities, though, I don't know if you guys heard this, but apparently the Chiefs are traveling in on Saturday. They're kind of treating it as a traditional road game. So they're just going to come in the night before. You don't have that, whereas you typically would. Each team gets some practice time on the field over the course of the week. That's a strange component to it. I mean, that slants the home field advantage even greater on the side of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when you think that the Chiefs are going in to play, at a field they haven't even seen until day of game.
Right.
It was something else. Yeah, I talked to my buddy Clyde Christensen, who's a quarterback coach down there, just yesterday. And I said, what are you up to? He said, well, we did all of our Super Bowl responsibilities for the media, and I'm going to play golf at my home course. I mean, that's pretty good.
There you go.
As if it's not good enough living life in Tampa.
Right.
Exactly.
You get to have all of that along with it.
Okay, so a very, very different year that we have had as far as covering the NFL goes. Larra Overton, you and I have talked about it at length, KCU as well. We now bring in a rock star, and I call Stacey Dales a rock star because of the great job that you do on the NFL Network. But we want to usually bring on a guest like Stacey and say, hey, the Super Bowl, let's talk about it. But not today. We'll get to that, Stacey. We'll get to that. I want to kind of dive into you and your journey a little bit, which is incredible. I mean, coming from the place that you did in Ontario and Canada to become the third overall pick in the WNBA, to be a great player in the WNBA, to then transition into television and the media. Stacey Dales, I want to say, I want your career, which I'll never have, but boy, oh boy, you have done such a great job up to here, and you're killing it on the NFL Network continuously.
I could use more introductions like that in my life. I'm just going to say that right now.
Well, absolutely.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much. It's so awesome to be with you guys. I hope my audio is okay. Are we sounding okay? I've got my earpods in. So it's kind of been a weird year, obviously, for everybody, but there's no secret here. I love me some Indianapolis Colts.
Okay.
And I love being with you guys. And when I was asked, I was just super pumped to join you. So thanks for having me.
Well, I'll start off really quick because, Larra, I know we have a lot to get over, but just being I want to start with the heavy stuff first. Being a woman in this male-dominated field for years, which is not the case anymore, but you've been doing it such a long time and been a pioneer in that. I want to ask you bluntly, have you taken on the responsibility of, or do you feel a responsibility that you've taken through your career, doing what you're doing at such a high level in front of the world, in front of with NFL Network? Is that a thing that you take responsibility for daily?
Well, there's no question. I think Larra can also, chime in here because it's for me, it's been about a 20-year journey in TV. And I think when you're in your 20s and you go through it, you learn a lot along the way. And there are some experiences that are unfavorable for women. Mm-hmm. But as you become sort of seasoned, I don't know if that's a good word. I think you sort of hold a bit of a candle for some of the young women coming up in the business. And I relish the opportunity to always help them. And, I think when it comes down to it, it's unfortunate that we even have to talk gender, because I think there's still this conception sometimes that, women aren't qualified. And it's amazing to be in 2021 and to still have people question your credentials. And so I can only imagine for women that are in their 20s and starting out in the business, just how challenging it is. So for me, I just try to keep my head down and do my job and do it at the highest level I can. And that's preparation to the fullest degree, to its core, really. I think I'm an over preparer anyways, but I think between that and building relationships is critical. And so, you build those relationships, therefore you build the trust. And for me, 12 years, I'm just completing my 12th season in the NFL, which is crazy. It's those relationships and the trust that you build over time, right? So I think that's, the best way I could answer that.
Stacey, one of the interesting things for you as well is not only is your role with NFL Network, but you're also a basketball analyst. And that was really one of the ways that you paved your way in television, was being an analyst for basketball. In terms of that role and being put in that position, how did that help you cultivate your voice and really find your way in sports broadcasting? Because you were able to be one who wasn't pigeonholed into, oh, she's only a sideline reporter. It's no, she has expertise where she can break down the game. And that built up your credibility to then kind of cross over into doing football and other avenues as well.
Yeah, great point. I think here's the short answer. Being in locker rooms, having played a sport, I think really is advantageous. And so just understanding when you're embedded with a team, you kind of know, you have the energy and the vibe. For me, I get to jump into different teams in different locker rooms. And I think with that athletic background, and of course, with that athletic background in hoops, I'm able to talk about hoops. It's almost like riding a bike for me. So I was super pumped a couple of years ago to join forces with Fox. This year's a little different, obviously. I don't know about you guys, but why is 2020 like filtering in 2021?
It's like a bad hangover, isn't it? Like it's a 2020 hangover now into February 2021.
Right. I'm starting to is this ever going to end? Because, even the Super Bowl this year, I was on the Packers beat heavy for the last month and a half. And I haven't not covered many Super Bowls, but, we're kind of cut in half in terms of what we're doing in our coverage, and they're still trying to make it work. But, back to the original point, being in locker rooms has been helpful because you get the mood and the tenor of a team. And I think that's always advantageous when you're reporting on and having that emotional background to be able to be relatable to some of the players that you cover.
Stacey, you played at a high level. I mean, world-class level, 3rd overall pick. Did that ever get
Olympian as well?
Olympian, Canadian Olympian, we can go on and on. Did it ever get tiring for you? And I mean, not the games, not the averages, not the awards, but the daily grind that you had to do at the University of Oklahoma into your professional career. Does that ever get tired for an athlete?
If you love it, no. I knew when I was finished at the end of my WNBA career, it was the injuries, really. I mean, the injuries just became insurmountable for me, hamstring after hamstring. But, if you love it and you're doing it for the right reasons, absolutely. I can remember working at ESPN my first 7.5 years of my career, my TV career, and I was still playing professional basketball. And so I had 2 basically full-time jobs because you can't take time off when you're a professional athlete. I mean, you can, but you can't. And I would go to, let's say I was doing an ACC basketball game, whether it be maybe Wake Forest and Carolina. And I would have to go find an auxiliary gym and take my shoes and, basically, work out in a gym and train myself while I was covering the game. So it was super weird, but you have to do it. And so you're following a regimen, you're following a strength and conditioning program, and you're balancing and juggling both. So yeah, Jeff, to answer your question, I would say absolutely challenging.
Stacey, it's always fun to get to see you because you're in Indy quite a bit. You mentioned you covered the Packers a ton for the last month and a half, but you're always here throughout the season. Usually we get to catch up with you at Grand Park for training camp and all of those things. Combine, we don't get to have this year, which I'm sad we're robbed of an opportunity to just hang out and catch up and enjoy, downtime and all of that. But You mentioned that you love some Indianapolis Colts. In terms of the national perspective of what Frank Reich and Chris Ballard are doing, can you just kind of share how the Colts stack up from like a national perspective and some of the things maybe that we as a Colts community might take for granted about the coaching staff and the roster that we have from the perspective that you get to have covering a multitude of teams across the league?
Yeah, so first on the combine, huge disappointment and slightly copious amounts of wine. Will not be So let's get that, I'm missing my St. Elmo's. Even when I was there this year, because of all the COVID protocols, I'm like, I can't even go to St. Elmo's. And
no, you just have to order room service, right? Or whatever.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Okay, so I'm just going to give you the real skinny here. I am obsessed with the Indianapolis Colts. Okay? From y'all to the beat. I love the beat. I love the players. I love the energy. I love the culture. From Chris Ballard to Frank Reich. Wait, let me start over. From Jim Irsay to Chris Ballard to Frank Reich to Matt Conti to the entire PR staff to the entire communication staff. I hide nothing. I leave no stone unturned because this franchise is remarkable. You try to be unbiased when you cover, on a national level, when you cover team to team. I root for this team. I truly root for them because of the people. Who sits down as a general manager and gives you an hour and 12 minutes at the end of the season? And the first line out of his mouth is, I hope we took care of you and did our jobs. I'm talking about Chris Ballard. You were able to do your jobs. I hope we took care of you. What do you need? I remember back, you guys, and you'll recall this as well. Gosh, back when COVID all started with the NFL and Chris Ballard started his press conference, OTA time, I'm talking. And he said, what can I do to help you? How can I help you? He's so accessible. And just having that accessibility for starters for me, and I'm sorry to be long-winded here, but to be able to text or communicate with somebody like Chris Ballard, to better tell the stories and to further tell and tell the right stories is so important to me and so critical. So, and then you have Frank Reich and I just, the staff, I'm so excited for Marcus Brady, so deserving to jump into that OC role. I'm a huge fan of Eberflus. When I'm down the field, and I missed this, you guys, this year. So when you're down there and you get to bump into those coaches, Flus, he walks Larra, you know what I'm talking about. He walks the track, right? I call it the track. So he gets his laps in and he'll stop and chat with you for 10, 15 minutes. And it's just a dream to have those relationships. So, for me, I'm just always grateful that I get to do this job, but then to do it with a team like the Colts. And I will finish with this. I am so pumped always when I get to, kind of piggyback on the beat. And I truly mean that. I have so much respect for the beat reporters, for the people that cover this team day in and day out. And I always appreciate at the end of a Zoom or at the end of a press conference, let's say we're back in normal time, that Matt Conti or whomever the PR person is allows me to get my questions in as well. I don't take that for granted. I don't take it lightly. And, hopefully that explains for you or summarizes how I feel about this organization.
I just had to text Matt Conti to let him know that you got a shout out because we don't often enough get to give Matt and Hayden Clark and Steve Campbell and Liz Christian Edwards and all of those guys enough credit for what they do. So he said, she's one of my favorites. So as much love as you feel to the Indianapolis Colts, trust us, we feel it right back. One of the things that you mentioned about Matt Eberflus is you talked about how accommodating he is, how personable he is. And one of the things that I think is really cool is I look at Coach Flus has 2 daughters. Coach Reich has 3 daughters, all who are heavily involved in sports. Marcus Brady's daughter is a soccer stud in the state of Indiana. And I feel like that one of the things I have started to see is that there are so many of these coaches who have an appreciation and who value having more women involved in sports. I would talk to Kevin Patullo at length about his daughter, who's a standout golfer. and she aspired to get into TV, and how important it was to have, more diversity across the board, whether it's more women, whether it's more people of color. And I do feel like that's one of the things that I've seen now being in this business in more than a decade is how inviting and welcoming it is, because there are coaches who truly want to see more different voices speaking from different perspectives within the sport. So I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about our guys.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Having girls is like a game changer, right? I mean, any guy I talk to that has daughters, it's a game changer, because there's a sudden protective nature about it. My dad's the same way. And, I think it's important, and I love to see the growth. I mean, we have a Super Bowl this year with obviously the Tampa Bay Bucs with a couple women on the staff. And, I love football. I love it. All the people in my life, whether they're male or female, love football, and the opportunities. There should be equity, and there should be an even playing field. And again, I go back to the integrity of the game, and I want to tell the right stories. And you mentioned Kevin Patullo, and I'm excited for him. I'm excited for Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni and their opportunities moving forward. And I just think that, again, the people that Chris Ballard has beneath him, and I don't say beneath in a demeaning way, but he's the guy in charge. And I think the culture that has been created in Indy is an exact example, Larra, of what you're talking about in terms of surrounding yourself with the right people, and to have all those, heads colliding, all those great minds colliding with their families and their daughters. I think it's awesome. And, you can always also see results really speak for themselves. And I just think this team, I was disappointed for the Colts this year, because obviously with Rivers and what he brought to the table and the opportunity, and then to go to the playoffs and lose to the Bills. And again, I'm such a fan of the organization, so it was a tough one for me to watch, but I just think it's going to go up and up and up.
Stacey Dales from the NFL Network joins us. She's better at basketball than you are and has a better job than you do. So we welcome her on this show today. I want to make a transition to the Super Bowl in a minute, but Stacey, you're on the pulse of what's happening around the NFL. Who does Stacey Dales, or who did you want to see or possibly see quarterback this team after the retirement of Phillip Rivers?
Oh my gosh. You're going to make me jump onto the rumor mill here.
I am.
I hate the rumor mill. Okay. Jeff, I hate it. I despise the rumor mill. And of course, we've all seen the Matt Ryan chatter. Obviously, Matthew Stafford's gone. He's, the coveted, entering 13th season, Matthew Stafford. And then of course the trade with Jared Goff. It's a tough one for me. I can't put a finger on it, but what I would say is I live in Chicago. Can you imagine if the Bears in some capacity traded Nick Foles to the Colts because he won a Super Bowl with Frank Reich with Philly? That's not going to happen. Come on. Yeah, I try to stay away from the rumor mill. I found it interesting to listen to Chris Ballard, because he seems to be really, big on Jacob Eason. And, I just took a lot from his press conference when I listened to it, his season-ending press conference. And who knows? Jacob Eason was a fourth-round draft pick in 2020. And, maybe he's a quarterback they're going to develop. And of course, Jacoby Brissett, I'm such a big fan of Jacoby Brissett, you guys, for the way he could play 15 years in this league, just the way he handles himself, to come in on special plays or special situations the way he did this year, and basically hand the keys over to Phillip Rivers without complaint. He could have a 15-year career because of the type of guy he is. But yeah, I mean, here's the bottom line. You got to get a left tackle, and you've got to get a quarterback. So we'll see. I mean, there's a bunch of quarterbacks out there. I think there's going to be a lot of movement with the salary cap, reduced as we move forward. I think we're going to see a lot. I was actually texting with a head coach's a friend of mine, his wife, last night, and they're all gearing up, because with the salary cap where it is, we're going to see a lot of guys that can't be retained on teams. And I mean, you look at the Colts roster alone. there's a lot of free agents, and there's going to be some big changes, I think, for every roster in the NFL moving forward. Maybe more than we've seen as one of my dogs tries to come in here.
That's usually what happens with me. It's usually my dog Tugboat is over here, but we just picked him up. He was at doggy daycare for like 5 days while I was gone. And so now any chance he has, he jumps up in the bed, like actually in our.
Well, it's also 200 pounds. You forgot to say.
165. So he's an adult human. But Stacey, one of the things.
One question.
Yeah.
Who do you guys want to see quarterback the Colts?
Well, I don't want to get. I don't want to get fired. I really don't want to get fired though. But
I guess for me, it's like I still am looking at what are the viable options. Like to me, I look at. Okay, Deshaun Watson wants a trade. Sure, I'd love Deshaun Watson, but he's not going to go within the division. So that seems unlikely. Dak Prescott, free agent, but is Dallas really going to let him go after seeing what the options are behind Dak Prescott? So I know that in terms of what we heard from Mr. Irsay last week, he made a strong push that they're in win now mode, but they're not going to force something. He made a strong, and I'm paraphrasing here, but, he did say that I don't want to say the surest route, but, you do have kind of the quickest path, so to speak, is to have, a veteran presence in the quarterback role. Because with any rookie, I don't care if it's, Trevor Lawrence going number 1 overall, he's going to need time, right? He's a rookie who's going from playing at Clemson to playing in the NFL. So any rookie is going to need time to integrate and get to the point that you want them to produce. So he was saying, there's certainly a strong push for a veteran presence, but he also followed that up and saying, we are still also building for the future. So I think that there is this pull, right, of how do you balance the win now mentality, but also creating the stability that we have moving forward. So it's this kind of constant battle where it's almost like, one day I'm like, this sounds like a good option. They're like, no, I don't know. But I am very intrigued, and I said this earlier, by what Jacob Eason has. I mean, we heard Phillip Rivers say, I think, Stacey, you may have been even on the call the day when Phillip said that there were throws in practice, which, by no fault of Jacob Eason's, it was very limited opportunities he had, but Eason was making throws that Phillip's like, there's no way I could make that throw. And so there are some things there that he brings to the table. So it's intriguing. I have no idea. I've gone so roundabout on that whole answer, but to me, it's just very, it's still unknown on really who is a viable, logical option via free agency or trade, because there aren't a lot of quarterbacks available in free agency this season.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Stacey Dale's doing what she does, turning the interview around and interviewing.
Yeah, exactly.
As we bring her on our show. I'm just going to say this to play it safe. When it comes to the quarterback situation, I personally believe that if Chris Ballard covets, and I use the word covets, a quarterback, whether it be 1 through 5 of the top 5 in this year's draft, that he does have the surplus to move up. I'll take Trevor Lawrence off that list. Probably your number 1 overall, I don't think. But to move up and grab one of the 5, I think he has the surplus. And I think Chris Ballard is the type of general manager that says, hey, we can win now, but we can also win in the future. So I'm just going to put that out there.
He loves the little wheel and deal leading up to the draft. He loves it.
I think that's fair, you guys. And I also think that, I just cannot, you think about Eason, right? We didn't have preseason games. I know that people don't like preseason games, but look at Jordan Love. If you listen to Brian Gutekunst, the GM of the Packers, or Matt LaFleur, the head coach, they're just anxious to get him some reps in the preseason to perform against other NFL talent, to go out and read a defense, even though it's preseason, right? Instead of your own defense. So I just pray we have an off season this year. I really hope that we have an opportunity for these players to develop a little bit. You said it, we're not even going to have a combine. So how does this all look moving forward? When we're in, say, March, April, May, when we need those OTAs that they didn't have a season ago. So when you think about a guy like Jacob Eason, and maybe he can sling it, but give him some opportunities in a real training camp setting, in a preseason setting, and then see what he can do.
And who better to learn behind than Frank Reich, Marcus Brady. You had time behind Jacoby Brissett and Phillip Rivers. I mean, if you take that culmination of knowledge and expertise and vision and decision-making and all of those things, I don't think you can have a better body of work to learn from. That's like a quarterback forum right there that you have assembled, that you had at your disposal over 2020. Stacey, can you just share a little bit on, you're in Chicago, so you have a unique task where you have a lot of teams that you're covering, that a lot of bases that you're covering with NFL Network. Can you explain what your role was over 2020, all the different teams you were covering? Because you almost have that Midwest niche, so to speak, where you're covering kind of everything from Green Bay to Indy and all around.
Yeah, it was a really strange year. And I do cover pretty much the bulk of the Midwest. I would say, obviously, the NFC North and the AFC South in terms of the Colts. I mean, at training camp this year, I remember I drove to Cincinnati. I came back through Indy because of the proximity there. So I was able to do a little bit of Joe Burrow coverage and the oddity of what the training camp preseason was. So, but yeah, I hit Detroit. I drove to Detroit. I mean, I'll cover, I had the Ravens there in Indy. So it just, wherever I can get to. And then as the season goes along, I start to kind of tail a team. And then, Packers lost this year. So they ended my season too.
I got you.
So thanks.
Hey, on Twitter, follow her at Stacey Dales. That's EY at the end of Stacey. I made that mistake. I put in the CY and it said account suspended. I said, Stacey, what is that? But I forgot the E. But at Stacey Dales on Twitter, at Larra Overton on Twitter. Normally, Stacey, you would be in Tampa covering this Super Bowl. You're not because of the COVID restrictions. So the thing in and around the NFL I want to get your take on is the hot young coaches. We see Staley out there, okay, LaFleur out there. We see McVay. And then playing in the game that means everything, we have Andy Reid on one side and Bruce Arians on the other, both of them nearing 70 years old. So what is the right way to coach a football team to success in the NFL? Hire the young gun or stick with the old guys who know what they're doing?
Well, I think if you look at these two head coaches, and I love the question, Jeff, and Arians and Coach Reid, I mean, look at all the guys that have learned under them, right? So, and I think experience does matter. I'm so excited for Bruce Arians. First time as a head coach in a Super Bowl setting. I mean, it's remarkable. The story is fantastic. I mean, and if you know Bruce, like he's so fun, and you just love to interview him. He's one of my favorite interviews ever. He's a nice person. So you have these people that are coaches, but they're also good people. And at the end of the day, you kind of root for them. But you couldn't have a better storyline. I think experience does matter. And I like it. I like that we have two of the elder statesmen in the National Football League, going head to head. And then the uniqueness of Tom Brady at 43 years old against the young buck and Patrick Mahomes, and a rematch from Week 12.
He's a Mahomes fan.
Oh yeah,
I can tell with the bark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, come here, Blue. But yeah, if the Super Bowl is anything that we witnessed in Week 12, which was an absolute offensive, 3-point win for the Chiefs in Tampa, right? And Tyreek Hill goes just nuts, right? I think set a single season record against a Tampa defense. Or a single game record. I can't remember what it was, but 200 and some odd receiving yards, which is just incredible. He was all over the field. I just think we're in store for a great game, and I just can't pick against Tom Brady.
Okay, really quick. Sorry, Larra. That was an offensive foul on your dog. I just saw you with the elbow reach in the paint. I saw you with the elbow, so that's an offensive foul on Stacey Dales. I'm sorry, Larra. I just love the dogs, and I'm glad they're part of the show.
I know. It's a good thing I have my headphones on. Otherwise, like Tugboat would be jumping in and responding. He'd want to get into the conversation if he hears those guys weighing in. Two quick questions for you. One of those just to follow up on the Super Bowl. Stacey, as there's so much talk, and rightfully so, about, Brady, Mahomes, battle, and those offensive juggernauts, are these great defenses somewhat getting overshadowed when you look at how prolific each of them have been and the magnitude that each of them have played, how integral they've been in the wins? When you look at, when you look at, especially for Tampa, the opportunities that defense created for Tom Brady and the offense, and then some of the massive plays that guys like Tyrann Mathieu and that great Chiefs defensive line, what they've been able to do and how they've produced.
Yeah, so I have to say it's a great point. I'm a little concerned about the offensive line of the Chiefs. I'll just get that out of the way with the banged up nature of them. And hopefully, with the close contacts and the COVID situation, they'll be, relatively closer to full strength. We'll see. But yeah, these defenses are no joke. But this Tampa defense is better than I think people understand. I mean, I've seen them a couple times in person this year, and they are so fast at the point of attack. Their front seven is monstrous. Those two linebackers, I mean, Devin White, what he's done this year in terms of his ability, I mean, he's a tackle machine. When you think about the Colts and their linebackers, I mean, you look at these two with Levante David and Devin White, these guys are no joke. Sideline to sideline, speed, explosiveness, aggressiveness. Todd Bowles, I think, has been simply fantastic and underrated all year long. And just, I mean, what they did to the Packers, you guys, in the NFC Championship game in itself. I mean, I know the Chiefs are good. I just think this Tampa defense is going to present some challenges this time around for Patrick Mahomes and this offensive line that's banged up. So, gosh, you wish they were at full strength with their tackles, but these guys are no joke from the front to the middle. And then the opportunities on the back end because of how good they are up front. I mean, I remember asking Matt LaFleur before the Packers faced him at Lambeau about him, Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator, and just they come from everywhere. And Todd Bowles does such a great job. Can you imagine the Packers were the best offense in football this year, the number one scoring offense in football. And Matt LaFleur admitted after the game, they took us out of what we do, the fourth quarter especially. That you take away those play actions and those boots and all those, the nakeds, whatever you want to call it, and take away the run game. So I think this Tampa defense is going to show up on Sunday.
Okay. Jeffrey alluded to how awesome your job is and how awesome of a job that you do. We know your love for football and your love for this business. What is your favorite aspect of the job?
The relationships that you build and foster over time. I mean, the trust that you build, working with the teams. I love the PR staffs. They're awesome people. They really work hard. What they did this season in terms of the COVID restrictions, the Zooms. I mean, I had a Zoom freeze, like a brain freeze. I had a Zoom freeze. There were so many opportunities for Zooms. I mean, you know that. you guys were, I saw you enough. During the season. I mean, it was pretty, it was a pretty challenging year and they made it all work. So it's the relationships, I think I would tell you.
We saw you a couple weeks ago. We saw you with Mr. Irsay on a Zoom talking some football. So, I mean, I know it was a little bit different year, but like you said, had to do it, whatever it took.
Yeah. And he was so gracious. And, I just think it's, this league is really a special league. And I think once you develop in it and you build those relationships, I missed being on the field this year and being able to say hi to some of my favorite players like T.Y. Hilton, who I just adore. Anthony Costanzo, happy retirement, Anthony, who you bump into these guys and you develop favorites along the way. But I was really grateful for the Zooms that the teams put together and they did a really good job.
The relationships are always something too, that when I'm asked the same question that I always focus on, and being able to be trusted to share someone's story. When we think of all those accolades in broadcasting and those different things, is there a greater compliment as a reporter, as a broadcaster, an announcer, than when you do establish a relationship that someone does trust you to share their story or trusts you with information, trusts you to report it? To me, I think that's one of the greatest compliments and the greatest reinforcements that they, admire what you do and respect what you do as a professional.
There's no question. And I think I have a bit of a different role. I'm, a reporter. I'm not necessarily deemed an insider. So I get a lot of information that I can't report. Mm-hmm. And I think that is as important as what I report in some respects, just because you protect those relationships because they continue to evolve over time. So if I talk to a general manager or a coach that gives me some background on something that's sensitive and understands they can trust me and, put that in the bank and put it on safeguard, then so be it. So I think I would add that as well, Larra.
Stacey, let me put you on the spot here. You said it yourself. You got a lot of information. Sometimes you can't spit it out, though. I get it. In your professional opinion, has Bill Belichick reached out to Tom Brady to congratulate him on a Super Bowl run?
Hell no. Are you kidding me? I mean, I love the question. Oh, no, there's not a chance. I think Gronk said this. No, and I think Gronk said this week. He was asked about his relationship, and he said something, I'm paraphrasing, he said something to the effect of, I've always had I had a great relationship with Bill Belichick, but I haven't talked to him since I became a Buck. So wow. I can't imagine that's any different for Tom.
Yeah, right.
So who knows?
It's like the moment. It's like the moment when you endure a breakup and you delete the contact info out of the phone, like the finality of it. Like, I'm moving on. That's it. Next chapter.
Exactly.
I love it. Stacey, I'm hoping you can stick around with us for a few more minutes. I want to get your pick on the Super Bowl, who you like this weekend, why, and also, if you can, I'd like to go over Larra's vacations that she had, which she had last week in Florida. So we kind of go with the daily routine, but I'd like you to be a part of that after you answer who do you think will win the Super Bowl?
I cannot pick against Tom Brady, my friends. I just can't. I would have. Before the NFC Championship game against the Packers, I couldn't pick against Tom, but if there was somebody that could beat him, I thought it would be Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau. And Patty Mahomes, his mom hates that term, Patrick Mahomes, is sensational. I just think round 2 from week 12, I think the Bucs are going to have a better scheme defensively. If I recall, there was over 900 total yards in that football game. And I just think one of these defenses has to show up. I think Tampa's going to show up. Again, the Chiefs have a banged up O-line. I think the tight ends are going to be huge. I think Gronk's going to come up huge in this game. Travis Kelce is incredible. I think the tight ends are going to be big, but I'm going to go with Tom Brady.
Excellent. I love it. All right. Well, let's transition right into it. Stacey, feel free to fire off some questions. Larra, 1, you and old man Tucker land in Florida. How long till you guys were in your swimwear?
Oh, well, it was a little cold when we landed, first of all. So we had to get a rental car and head on over to the condo. But let me think about this. Within the first 3 hours, and that counts an hour drive time. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
We got there for the afternoon. We watched a good sunset because we had to, hit the grocery and stock up on the essentials, pack a cooler, head to the beach. So yeah. It was within 3 hours. So we're pretty efficient.
Any karaoke foggy nights? I like to get into those. Any foggy karaoke nights?
No foggy karaoke nights. We did go. It was fun because everywhere in Florida has outdoor seating, outdoor dining. So it was much more open where we could walk around and do popping from place to place. So the very first night we were there, we hit a couple of good spots. Every place closed down relatively early, I think, to limit some of the foggy karaoke shenanigans. So we were shutting it down responsibly by 10 o'clock or so. The last night we were there, some friends hosted us to have stone crab, and they have an amazing balcony on the top floor of the complex. So we were able to enjoy a lovely night of wine. I'm making up for Combine missing out on the wine nights with Stacey by front loading it in terms of the vacation. So we did a big stone crab dinner and whatnot. But a lot of days on the beach. We did a nice bike ride one day. We did some hiking. So it was wonderful.
Stacey, I have to do this.
Stacey has a question.
I don't have a vacation. She does. Go ahead, Stacey.
I have a question. Are you one of those karaoke singers that thinks you're honestly really good and you I'm Canadian, so we use the word dig. You really dig and you really get after it. And then that's the first part of the question. On the back end of the question, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best karaoke singer of all time, where do you rate yourself?
Okay, I would be a negative ranking. I am horrendous. No matter how, how many beverages or anything I've had, I'm never going to be good and I'm never going to think I'm good. And I can also tell you guys, nothing makes me more uncomfortable. And I'm not an uncomfortable person. Nothing makes me more uncomfortable than people singing who think that they're good and they're not. Like, I cannot watch American Idol.
Yeah.
I have heart palpitations because, like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. You know, like, that was the worst. So I can't do it. It's like I get uncomfortable even watching it. So I have no false pretenses on my karaoke talents, on how terrible I am. I know I'm horrendous, so I will try to avoid it so that no one is exposed to my lack of talents. Therefore, Jeffrey, what about you?
Oh my gosh, I can't sing worth a lick. I like to think I can do imitations, but that's what I try and do.
But imitations.
It's just about entertaining. That's all I try to do. If I get the mic in my hand and we're karaoke, it's just about putting on a good show. But I love these questions. I could go with Stacey Dales forever. You're talking music. I'm going to ask you, your first concert, Stacey Dales, that you ever went to, what was it?
Oh my gosh, Alanis Morissette.
A Canadian. Was it the Tragically Hip? Was it Rush? Was it Alanis Morissette? How about that?
I've seen the Hip, definitely in concert. As a Canadian, you have had to have seen the Hip.
Sure.
But yeah, Alanis Morissette. I grew up in a small town called Brockville, Ontario. She is from Ottawa, Ontario, which is about an hour from Brockville. And so, yeah, when I was in high school, I went to, what was it? You Ought to Know or something like that.
Jagged Little Pill?
Yeah.
You ought to know. Yeah.
And now I'm uncomfortable and now I'm sweating because Jeffrey's singing.
Well, we said karaoke. So anyway, I'll wrap it up. Great vacation for you. We'll talk more about your other vacations throughout the year, Larra. You know, I like catching up with you. But a huge thank you for the time and taking this opportunity to get to know you a little bit. To Stacey Dales from the NFL Network. Again, folks, she's better than you in basketball and she has a better job. So that's what I welcome you back all the time. And I've been saying to you, this gets a little weird and I'm sorry, but I've always went out of my way when I would see Stacey and I'd walk behind her on the sidelines and I'd say, great job, Stacey, keep up the great work. And she'd be like, yeah, thanks. And I'm back to, we've been a fan of yours for a lot of years, Stacey. So keep up the great work.
The feeling is mutual, Jeffrey, Larra. When you asked me, I was so honored. Honestly, all the jokes aside, you guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. And hey, Colts Nation, you're coming back, baby. You're coming back next year.
There it is, man. Love
Stacey,
it.
we owe you an evening of karaoke the next time we get to come to Indy and there are no COVID restrictions. So
that's it. Thank you
so much.
St. Elmo's awaits. Thanks so much to Stacey Dales, again, to our friends at PointsBet Sportsbook. Enjoy the Super Bowl. It is this Sunday, and we'll be back with next Tuesday-ish. We'll be back again with the latest of Colts news. Who knows what's going to happen by next Tuesday, but I'm just saying, folks, keep your computers and your phones on. For Larra Overton, Casey Valier, my name is Jeffrey Gorman. Again, big thank you to Stacey Dales. Follow her on Twitter, @Stacey Dales, @Larra Overton, and I'm @Hey Gorman. Folks, we'll talk to you next week.